All right, hey everybody, back. All right, and it is time for our study group. Study group. So that's what we're doing, study group time. So hope y'all are doing good. All right, yay. Okay, so I'm. Let me know if y'all can hear me. It looks like everything's coming through and the sound's coming through. I'm using my special mic, so because I'm recording the live, so I can use it as a podcast later on. So I just want to make sure y'all can hear me. So let me know if y'all can hear me. Hey, Miss Jenny. So let me know if y'all can hear me and if everything's okay. So I'm waiting for y'all to see if it shows up on y'all's end. Yeah, you know, Miss Jenny, I'm the same way. Even though, it's work, and you have to put the time into it at the same time. Even when I'm on vacation and I take like a week off, I miss like the study group. I miss the lives. I miss like doing these engagements with y'all. So awesome, perfect, awesome. Yeah, I was decided to use my mic, and I think I have it down. So, and I bought another mic as well. That's like a special mic. It's like one of these headset mics for like more like when I'm doing lectures, because I want to start doing lectures. So I bought a special like the special. Ear thing here, so it's like a special thing, so that way that it'll sound even clearer and that you can like hear me talking when I'm giving meditation or when we're doing lectures, etc. So I'm preparing myself for these things also, just because. And then I also got myself one of these as well, so and for the inner ear thing, so that way I can have an inner ear thing, because I don't know why they don't make them with an inner ear thing and the mic thing, because I mean, sometimes you're going to want to engage with people at a distance, and sometimes you need to be able to hear them as well, but that's okay. I haven't tested this other one out yet, and that's okay. I don't need to test it yet, but I wanted to make sure that y'all could hear me. So awesome. Hey, my BFF is here. My BFF is here. So guys, let me tell you before yes, Ted Ferny talk, right? That's what I actually wrote out. I wrote out a TED talk of like years ago. I think I still have it saved. And it was a TED talk about psychic ability and like how this works. And I was going to be like walking on the stage and like doing the whole thing. And I wrote it out. And I wrote it out in the middle of the night. This was years ago. So this was like 4 years ago when I wrote this originally. So, but it's there. It's still in my notes. And I have it ready. And actually I decided to use part of it for my book that I'm working on. So I decided to use part of it because I thought it was such a good like intro. So that's what I used it for. But let me tell y'all what was going on before we get started with our topic. So, I've been telling you guys about my mom and how like there's, stuff going on with my mom, and, I'm going to Houston because we're going to be moving her to a new place. And the complex that she lives at, she's no longer going to live there. And they weren't, the lease was expiring. So we were looking for a new place for her. So we found her a place. My sister went ahead and, put her name on the lease. My mom's on the lease as well. It was not in her price. We were trying to find something within her price range because we were trying to make it affordable for her, but it's just, what we want for her is different from what she can afford. So we decided we're just going to like split my sister and I, we're just going to like offset the difference. So we found her a place that's better for her, more comfortable. It has all of the things she needs, wash and dry, everything. And it's close enough to my sister, so my sister doesn't have to worry about driving too far to get to her if she needs to. And it's in a nicer complex. And so we decided, okay, look, you know what? Let's just screw the affordability thing. Let's just offset her costs. And so we'll just split that half and half. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I'm down with that. My sister's down with that. So that's what we decided to do. That like made it so much easier. And so since then we've been getting, all the details worked out and the move date, etc. The move date keeps shifting just because they have something sooner, but they're not sure. So they're going to get back to us. So I don't know when exactly I'm supposed to go to Houston. Right now, before it was like, okay, I was going to go in like the 15th of January, and then that shifted, and then it was going to be like the beginning of January, and then it's shifting again, and now it's like the 20th of this month, and then it might be shifting back to the 1st. So we're like, okay, I don't know. So I'm just waiting to get clarity so that way we know what we're doing, and that way I know when I'm going to be going down there to help her with the move. So I'm only going to be there for like one solid day. I'm driving in, packing, helping to pack the day that I arrive. The next day we're doing the move, and then the next day I'm like heading back up to Santa Fe. So that's the plan. So I'm going to be like, like a maniac is what it's going to be like. But that's why I'm getting my booster tomorrow, because I needed to get it out of the way. So that way I give myself a good 15 days before I'm down there. That way, because that's a heavily populated area. I'm not trying to play with anything. So and here, like, I don't interact with people very often. So it's not really an issue here. It's more going down there. So I want to meet you when you come, girl. It's gonna be a journey. I say that's gonna be a journey. You know what I did once, and I'll call myself an asshole because I felt like an asshole, and I was just like, it was just more of like a joke, but I guess they took it wrong. One of my cousins, because we have a huge family. So like the minute that my family find out that I'm going down there or that I'm going to be in Houston, they're all like, "Oh, we need to go do this. We need to go." Like people are trying to book it. I'm like, y'all must be under the impression that I have all this free time. Yeah, I barely have enough time to like sleep. So I don't know what y'all are talking about. So that's usually how I am with my family. But like a couple years ago, when we were first moving up here, I was having to go back and forth, and I was only going to be in town for like 2 days, and I had to deal with my mom at that time, and I had to deal with a move and like all this stuff. So it was a lot of extra stuff. And one of my cousins, like, which I haven't talked to, like, I have cousins that we are connected on on Facebook and on Instagram, but we're connected on Facebook and Instagram. But at the same time, it's not like we spend in-person time with each other. We just keep in touch. But I hadn't seen this cousin in like 10. I want to say maybe like 10 years. Like, it'd been a long time since I'd seen this cousin. So I was only going to be in town for like a day or two. And she was like, we need to get together and have lunch. And I was like, girl, and this is what I said. This is why I'm an asshole. Because what I said was, I was like, girl, I was like, the list of people that are trying to spend time with me, it's growing by the minute, and I can assure you, you are not on the top of that list. And I just meant it to like say like a joke, like, girl, the list is growing long, so you're like getting. And I guess her sister, my other cousin, saw that and took it like I was saying, like, you're not worthy of my time. That was not what I was trying to say. That's how it was interpreted, and so she was offended by that. And I was like, girl, I'm so sorry. I was like, look, I didn't mean to say it the way that it came across or the way you thought I said it. I was just trying to tell you that the list of people wanting to see me or wanting to spend time with me or trying to like get my time is growing by the minute, and it's just, I gotta focus on the priorities, and so I'm only gonna have so much time, and that's all I was trying to say. But I had to like apologize and grovel for a few weeks because my other cousin was like, hey, maybe we can spend time, or well, maybe not, because you may be too busy, and maybe we can have lunch. And I was like, so they haven't lived it up, but I still remember that. I still feel awful for the way that came across, but I didn't mean it the way it said it, so I have to apologize for that. But anyways, that's the way it is. But yeah, so I'll be in town for a few moments, for a hot minute, and then I'll be bouncing back to Houston, because bouncing back to Santa Fe because my partner wants me here for Christmas. I'm like, I ain't trying to spend Christmas without you, so I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna be gone for too long, so I just gotta go down there, take care of business, and then get back up here. So, but it's a journey, right? It's a journey. So all right, guys. So study group time. So here you go. So we're doing Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. And so what I do for study group, y'all, for those of y'all who are just tuning in, no readings in this hour. All personal readings were in the last hour. This is just study group. So what we do is we read, and then we converse, or I talk about the content. I give my own opinions. If y'all have spiritual questions or topical questions about this or just spirituality in general, feel free to put those questions in the comment section below. And I try to look at questions before I get off here for the evening. But no personal readings or personal questions. Okay, and I actually have to. Yes, she's like, pin this. I was like, I have to put the thing. Ray's on me. She's like, no, Ferny, I'm about to remind you, because every time I don't say nothing, you get on me and you try to tear me up. I ain't trying to tear you up. I'm just saying, like, you gotta keep me in check, because I forget stuff. Study group, grupo, grupo más. Let's see. No readings, no privates, no private readings. Okay. And there it is. All right, there it is. All right, cool. Oh, I gotta pin it. Pin comment. Okay, cracking the whip so you don't bust my balls, girl. Oh, girl, busting balls. That's the story of my life. The story of my life. All right, guys. So let's get started here. So I'm gonna get started. So the last place we left off at is in chapter. Which is that chapter? All right, so chapter. Oh, there was another thing I wasn't telling you before. I was about to start, but I had to tell you guys. So the point I was telling you about my mom and moving and stuff. Remember, because last time when we were on here, last time on the runway, so last week when we were on here, I was like telling y'all how I was like struggling because I that was a whole set of changes and a whole lot of stuff going on there. Luckily, it has been not as big a deal as I expected it to be. I was prepared to have to do a whole lot more than I'm actually having to do. My sister has really done a whole lot where I'm like, I really am spoiled because like she's taking care of a whole lot. I'm like, well, I'm gonna be there. I'm moving, but when I first found out about my mom and the whole stuff, one thing that happened, which I never mentioned last week, was I had gone walking by myself. My partner had worked out that day, and I had gone walking. And when I was on my walk, I was walking by, and then this massive, massive owl flew by, right, literally in front, like right here. Like I'm like right here, right? I'm right here, and the owl's like right there, like flew by me. It scared the shit out of me. I mean, it literally scared because I was like walking, and I was like, just breathe. And you're just going to kind of get yourself together and bring yourself back to center. Something like trying to get into the right state of mind. And this damn big ass owl flies by my face, like literally almost flew into my face and scared the hell out of me. And I was like, well, shit, y'all, like that's a sign. So I'm going to take that as a sign that it's going to be fine and just go with the flow, go with this. It is what it is. So that's what happened last week. And then today, I was walking and it was by myself again because I sometimes when I walk by myself, it's usually on the days that my partner works out because he doesn't need to walk or exercise. So I'm like, well, I got to get my exercise. So I was walking, and then again today I was just like, okay, I'm like, it's not bad, it's not. And I had literally just gotten off the phone with my cousin because I was telling her about all of the changes and all the stuff we're doing with my mom, and I just got off the phone with her, and I was like, I'm feeling good. It sounds like it's all good. Like it's all working itself out pretty well actually. And then I got off the phone, and then there was another owl that flew by as well. It wasn't that close to me, but it was right there, massive, big old owl, and I was like, there it is again, and it was the same thing that happened right after. So it's nice to be able to feel that way, to feel like supported by the universe. A few days ago, I drove into town to pick up an order because I went to go pick up something at Home Depot, and in the like, what is it when they bring it out to you, the curbside, and so on the way there, I was thinking to myself, like, one of my goals and one of my desires in life was to, at some point, that I could get to a place where I could just either buy my mom a house or pay for her living situation so she could just use her money and spend it the way she wants to. Like, that would be the goal, and that's always been like one of my desires. And of course, like, in order for you to do that, you have to make sure you've got more than enough. And I'm in a good position for myself, but as far as a lot of extra, right now I try to focus on like saving for the future and stuff like that. And so for me, when I thought about this, I was like, this is the universe aligning me with my goals. Like, one of the goals I had was to get to a place where I could support my mom or pay for her stuff, and she doesn't have to worry about it, and she doesn't have to deal with the expenses of stuff, and I can just cover it. Like, that was my goal. Now granted, right now me and my sister are splitting the cost, but the goal was to just pay for everything and not have to worry about it. So this is one step closer to that. So I was like thinking about that. And right when I was thinking about that, and I was on the road, I was on the freeway or the highway, because we don't have freeways here. We have highways. I was on the highway and I was thinking about that, and I was like, I like getting to my goal. And I was thinking about it that way. Like, I'm one step closer to my goal. And right in front of me, a car got right in front of me and gets right in front of me. And on the license plate, it was pay, PAY, and then 555, which is an alignment number. So it was like, yes, one day you'll pay, and it's alignment. You're aligning to what you wanted to pay for. So I was like, yes. So there was like alignment in that moment. So I was like excited and happy about that. So cool. This is good. This is good. So all right. So let's get started here. So where am I at? So the ego in illness. All right, an illness can either strengthen or weaken the ego. If you complain, feel self-pity, or resent being ill, your ego becomes stronger. It also becomes stronger if you make the illness part of your conceptual identity. I am a sufferer of such and such disease. So now we know who you are. Some people, on the other hand, who in normal life have a big ego, suddenly become gentle and kind and much nicer people when they are ill. They may gain insight insights they may never have had in their normal life. They may access their inner knowing and contentment and speak words of wisdom. Then, when they get better, energy returns and so does the ego. When you are ill, your energy level is quite low, and the intelligence of the organism may take over and use the remaining energy for the healing of the body. And so there is not enough left for the mind, that is to say, egoic thinking and emotion. The ego burns up considerable amounts of energy. In some cases, however, the ego retains the little energy that remains and uses it for its own purposes. Needless to say, those people who experience a strengthening of the ego in illness take much longer to recover. Some never do, and so the illness becomes chronic and a permanent part of their false sense of self. Page 125. The collective ego. How hard is it to live with yourself? One of the ways in which the ego attempts to escape the unsatisfactoriness of personal selfhood is to enlarge and strengthen its sense of self by identifying with a group, a nation, political party, corporation, institution, sect, club, gang, football team. In some cases, the personal ego seems to dissolve completely as someone dedicates his or her life to working selflessly for the greater good of the collective without demanding personal rewards, recognition, or aggrandizement. Aggrandizement. What a relief to be freed of the dreadful burden of personal self. The members of the collective feel happy and fulfilled no matter how hard they work, how many sacrifices they make. They appear to have gone beyond ego. The question is, have they truly become free, or has the ego simply shifted from the personal to the collective? The collective ego manifests the same characteristics as the personal ego, such as the need for conflict and enemies, the need for more, the need to be right against others who are wrong, and so on. Sooner or later, the collective will come into conflict with other collectives, because it unconsciously seeks conflict and it needs opposition to define its boundary and thus its identity. Its members will then experience the suffering that inevitably comes in the wake of any ego-motivated action. At that point, they may wake up and realize that their collective has a strong element of insanity. It can be painful at first to suddenly wake up and realize that the collective you had identified with and worked for is actually insane. Some people at that point become cynical or bitter, and henceforth deny all values, all worth. This means that they quickly adopted another belief system when the previous one was recognized as illusory and therefore collapsed. They didn't face the death of their ego, but ran away and reincarnated into a new one. A collective ego is usually more unconscious than the individuals that make up that ego. For example, crowds, which are temporary collective egoic entities, are capable of committing atrocities that the individual away from the crowd would not be. Nations not infrequently engage in behavior that would be immediately recognizable as psychopathic in an individual. As the new consciousness emerges, some people will feel called upon to form groups that reflect the enlightened consciousness. These groups will not be collective egos. The individuals who make up these groups will have no need to define their identity through them. They no longer look to any form to define who they are. Even if the members that make up those groups are not totally free of ego yet, there will be enough awareness in them to recognize the ego in themselves or in others as soon as it appears. However, constant alertness is required, since the ego will try to take over and reassert itself in any way it can. Dissolving the ego by bringing it into the light of awareness, this will be one of the main purposes of these groups, whether they be enlightened business, charitable organizations, schools, or communities of people living together. Enlightened collectives will fulfill an important function in the arising of the new consciousness, just as egoic collectives pull you into unconsciousness and suffering. The enlightened collective can be a vortex for consciousness that will accelerate the planetary shift. Incontrovertible proof of immortality. Ego comes about through a split in the human psyche, in which identity separates into two parts that we could call I and me, or me and myself. Every ego is therefore schizophrenic, to use the word in its popular meaning of split personality. You live with a mental image of yourself, a conceptual self that you have a relationship with. Life itself becomes conceptualized and separated from who you are when you speak of my life. The moment you say or think my life and believe in what you are saying rather than just being a linguistic convention, you have entered the realm of delusion. If there is such a thing as my life, it follows that I and life are two separate things. And so I can also lose my life, my imaginary treasured possession. Death becomes a seeming reality and a threat. Words and concepts split life into separate segments that have no reality in themselves. We could even say that the notion my life is the original delusion of separateness, the source of ego. If I and life are two, if I am separate from life, then I am separate from all things, all beings, all people. But how could I be separate from life? What I could there be apart from life, apart from being? It is utterly impossible. So there is no such a thing as my life, and I don't have a life. I am life. I and life are one. It cannot be otherwise. So how could I lose my life? How can I lose something that I don't have in the first place? How can I lose something that I am? It is impossible. All right, I'll stop there because that's going to the next chapter, which is chapter 5. Okay, so here's let's talk about this for a second. You know, and as I was reading this and I was thinking about this, I was already having thoughts about the way that I want to express this, because when I think of I, oh, sorry guys, I'm getting to that time of the day where I'm starting to wind down. So when I think of I think of it this way. So, you know, I go outside, I take these pictures, right? I take pictures of the stars, magnificent stars here, and I post these pictures online. And if I were to envision or imagine our physical world with all of the souls, all of the personalities that are engaged in this dance, in this act we call the physical universe, life, I think of it as like stars, right? I think of it as like stars. And so each one of us is like a star in the three-dimensional universe. We have a light. Some of us have a light that's a little dimmer. Some of us have a light that's very bright. But we're all stars, and we're all reflections of the greater being, or the greater light, the greater, source. So when I need to focus on one star or one area of the sky, what do? I take my phone out and I take a snapshot and I take a picture of that part of the sky. But that's not enough. That's still very generalized area of the sky. And our soul, when our soul is desiring to understand and experience, or have an experience that will help it to see itself, to experience itself, which is, source or God. If God splits itself into souls, if the soul splits itself into personas and lifetimes, each lifetime represents a perspective and identity, right? The ego version of a persona. So if I need to focus on one particular star in the sky to understand it and to experience it, I pull out my telescope and I focus it. It's a tool. My telescope is a tool designed to fixate, to focus, to magnify that particular area in the sky, that point of light, that star. When I want to experience that star or have a closer relationship to it, I use my telescope, fixate on it, and then I zoom in and I focus in, and I have that opportunity to have that moment. And that's what the soul essentially is doing. The soul is here expressing itself through the personas, through the spirit beings that we each individually are. So my soul is experiencing itself through this unique persona. And the ego is a telescope of sorts. Where it allows it to magnify and to fixate on a perspective, on an identity, and allows it to have a more direct relationship with that experience, with that oneness there. And so that's what the ego is. The ego can serve as a telescope that allows the soul to kind of fixate and utilize that point of perspective. So I don't think of the ego, again, and I need to say this over and again, the ego I don't think of as a enemy of the state. I think of the ego as a tool. But if you allow the ego to run rampant, if you are not keeping your ego in check, if you don't get perspective, which all spiritual work is perspective. If you want to be a spiritual person, learn how to see and experience life from both the point of an individual experiencing from that perspective and the point of source experiencing from the greater view, or the greater whole, the objective perspective of love and being. So you learn to distinguish and you learn to experience between both sides, and you develop a spirituality that is just, you can't beat it. So when my soul, Aja, is using Ferny and is using the ego, my ego, as a telescope, fixating on the perspective and the experience that I am gaining in this lifetime. And it is using that to experience itself, which God in itself is the same thing. It's all one. It's just different compartmentalized versions of itself. But sometimes people will become so consumed with the experience of looking through the telescope that they just begin to only see the entire universe through the telescope and not realizing what else there is, not glancing the full spectrum of things, not seeing it from a completely different vantage point or perspective. They get caught up in just seeing it from that magnified singular focus. And that's where the ego goes awry. That's when people get in trouble, because at that point they are essentially buying into the fact that the existence of this universe revolves around this small area of focus, and that becomes everything to that person. So at that point, that's when you become obsessed, or you become involved or engaged, overly engaged with obsessive things, or with what is it called when you're addictions of some sort, whether it's the addiction of a perfect life, the addiction of a perfect relationship, the addiction of having a soulmate, the addiction of being a perfect parent, the addiction of having incredible sex, the addiction of sex, the addiction of drugs or substances, the addiction of this or that. I mean, they're all addictions. At the end of the day, every single thing that we take pleasure from can become an addiction. And every single thing that we become obsessed over can become an addiction. So we become either addicted to our obsessions or addicted to our pleasures. And either way, it's all the same. But that happens when you get so fixated at a point in space where that's all you see and that's all you think the universe exists as. But it's not. It's like this grand symphony of beautiful light, and the light is never ending. And if you allow yourself to just sit there, and here in Santa Fe, I can do this. I can go out, let my eyes acclimate to the sky, and then immediately I'll start to see more stars and more stars and more stars, because you allow your eyes to adapt and to adjust, and you take in more. You allow yourself to take in more light. And so in this reality, in this world, some of us are walking around just experiencing life through this like telescope and being stuck on a point of perspective, and we become consumed by that, and it becomes our obsession or our addiction. And so in order for you to really step out of that, or to step into a much higher spiritual perspective, you have to first remember who you are. You are not this point of perspective. You're not the singular focus. You are more than that. That is just the tool that you're using to engage with this world in. That's just what you're using to experience life through. But it's not all that you are. It's just a tool. It's just a mechanism. It's just what you're designed to do. But when you allow yourself to expand away from that singular point, and you expand into a more objective perspective, and you pay attention and you look around you at the light that you're surrounded by, then you see the light of others. You experience the love and the connection and the symphony. You experience all these other aspects of being that are just incredible and can wow you. And you can reconnect with that loving being. You can connect with that light being. You can connect with that divine being. That is God. That is we. We are God in singular form. And God is us in grand form, or in perfect form. And so it's just two sides of the same coin, but from a completely different vantage point. And that's how you have to approach things. So if you want to develop spirituality, then just start expanding your range. Start expanding the way you perceive things. If you're used to seeing things from the perspective of a single mother busting her ass and feeling like any man is just waste and dirt, and so if you're seeing it from that perspective, then yeah, you're gonna define your reality, your world, your experiences are gonna be based around that perspective. There's really no way around that. But if you begin to disassociate or detach yourself or disconnect a bit sometimes through practice, through meditation, through awareness exercises, then you begin to take in way more, and you begin to see things from a completely different perspective, and it's like with my sister, automatically with my mother, I felt a little guilty because I was like, I'm not there to be able to take all this on myself. And I'm used to being that person. I'm used to always, being there when something's going down so that I can fix it or be a part of the solution. And at this point, I'm at a distance, and my sister has decided, for her, she's like seeing this as an opportunity to practice, because when she has kids, it's going to require a lot of instances where you are definitely, your plans may not go according to what you expected, or you may have to adapt and change things, regularly, or you may have to inconvenience yourself. Having children is a big responsibility. And so she sees this as an opportunity to prepare. So instead of seeing it as like all of this work that's having to be done, and she's seeing it as a disadvantage, she's trying to work it into her life so that she can be better prepared to be a parent and work around the needs and adapt to a child that is going to require attention. So that's what she's seeing it as. And I, even though I felt a little guilty when she explained it to me that that's how she was seeing it, it really helped me to see it from her perspective and completely get out of my own head about it. And I'm like, you're right. This is a great opportunity for you to have that experience. I learned how to be a parent to people when I was young. I mean, I had to take over my mother's bills and responsibilities around the age of like 12 or 13, because she was not able to take care of herself or to take care of us. And she was, not very stable mentally to be able to do those things. So I had to step up and step into that dominant, parental role at a very young age. And so I put in my time with my mom. I put in my effort. I got that experience with her. My sister never really had that experience. And if anything, she was also my responsibility, because I took on that role with her as well. So I had those two sets of responsibilities when I was very young. And so now it's like my sister's turn, and she's stepping in and she's doing that, and I'm at a distance, or I'm not as involved. And so, in the moment, I want to, feel guilty or feel bad about it, because I feel like I'm supposed to be there to, get involved and fix it, or do what she's doing, going to the apartment complex, filling out the paperwork, going to the bank and taking it, like, that's the things that I am used to doing. But she's doing it, and she's doing a damn good job, by the way. So, and I even told her, I was like, I'm super proud of you, but at the same time, whoa, am I impressed by how efficient you are. And she was like, well, I have a spreadsheet, because when we were looking for apartments for my mom, she was like getting all the numbers, all the apartments, and she was creating a spreadsheet of all the places, and if we heard back from a place yet or not, and the next one, and the costs and all the breakdown. Like, I was like, girl, for me, I was like, I would just write a piece of paper and a number, and like, okay, like she was like creating this whole like Excel spreadsheet. So I was like, girl, you're like on a whole nother level to me when it comes to coordinating and working around stuff. So it was funny, but it's also very proud of her. I'm really proud of this. And I'm like, I've always been proud of my sister. And that's one of the things that I've always been, with her, is I always telling her how proud of her, but seeing her, how she's been handling this whole situation, I'm even more proud of her. I don't know if that was even possible, but I'm even more proud of her. So I was like, okay, but it's just like those little things. But it's just interesting to have those experiences where, you could see it as a personal human challenge or issue, but when you try to see it from a spiritual perspective and try to expand yourself out into how to see it, or how to interpret or receive the experience, you can shift the way it's happening, and how you're being affected, and what it's changing within you, how it's causing a shift within you. And I was like, okay, I get it. I get what this is supposed to be. So it's just interesting, and things are like aligning for us. Like, I was already like, okay, like my sister handled half of the arrangements. I told her, okay, I got to get, mom's electricity changed over. I've got to get her water changed over. I got to get her gas changed over. Got to get her internet and her phone changed over. And the internet, the phone's already in my name, so that would be easy. But the other things are in her name, and she's really hard of hearing. My mom, she doesn't have she doesn't have a hearing aid yet, which we're planning on getting for her. But so she's hard of hearing, so it's hard to talk to her on the phone. And so it's interesting, because I was like, okay, I got to get all these things worked, changed over to the new apartment when we get the date. And then my sister was like, today, she was like, hey, guess what I found out today? I was like, what? She's like, well, at the complex that she's going to be at, they will actually we can do that through them. So we don't even have to have it set up separately. They take care of the water, the electric, and the gas if we want them to. And they'll just charge mom every month. So all we have to do is just, I was like, oh, that's even perfect because they'll take care of all that extra work and I don't have to do that. Yeah, let's do that. So it worked out. So I was like, geez, man, I'm like being spoiled even when in the middle of a crisis when I'm having to go through stuff. So it's just that craziness there. But yeah. Her inner accountant came out. My sister said, yeah, she's hysterical. She's like, I was just like, girl, you're like on a whole nother level. Is your mom okay with you talking about her? No judgment, just wondering. My mom, first of all, my mom has nothing to do with social media. She can't barely use her phone. Secondly, my mom is one of the biggest learning experiences I've ever had. And if I'm going to endure the amount of suffering and challenge that I had to endure through my life in childhood, I'm going to use those experiences to teach others. So I could give a rat's ass whether she cares or not. She doesn't care. My mom doesn't care, just so y'all know. But it doesn't matter because if I have an experience with another human being, at that point, I own my part of that experience and I can share that part of experience if I wanted to. And so that's why I'm like, now granted, I don't put everybody's like stuff out there. So I have plenty of experiences in this world and I don't put everybody's stuff out there. Usually I generalize stuff, but with my mother, it's a completely different story because the experience with my mother is very unique to me and to her schizophrenia and dealing with all of that craziness. And at this point with my mother, she has been a huge teacher in my life. And so many people see themselves in my experience with her. So at the end of the day, I went through this with her. I own my part of that experience and I have the and I don't care if she had an issue with it. And if my mom came to me, she says, I have a problem with you talking about me on the internet. She doesn't know how to really use the internet, but I'd be like, well, sorry, but you put me through this, mother. So I have an entitlement to express and share what I had to go through. And this will share and this will teach other people. So yeah, I mean, granted, people don't, they don't get to, no, it's not an issue. It's a non-issue for me at this point. But it's like, no, if people have experiences with me, like I own my part of that experience. And so I will use it to teach other people about it. But my mom doesn't care. She's like, it's whatever. She doesn't care. But that's how my family is. They're like, I don't care. I don't. She's like, I know that's right. Yeah. It's like, no, absolutely. Mental illness is not her fault. But let me tell you a story about my mother, because I don't think that you understand some of the specifics around that. My mother, she was the kind of person where she allowed males to dominate her, and she did not establish enough wisdom around relationships with men, and she continued to perpetuate the same cycles with men in her life. And so granted, even though there's a reason why I was born out of wedlock, because she made bad decisions. And so she put us in a situation where she fell in love with a guy at her job, because she used to clean offices at night, and she fell in love with the guy. This was after I was born. I was like 5 or 6 years old. And my father was never part of my life. I never met my father. And so this was another male that she fell into a relationship with. And my mother, again, she lacked common sense and wisdom when it came to relationships with men. And so she made some bad decisions. And so she fell in love with a guy from work who talked his way into her life. And so when I was 5 or 6, never having met this person, one day my mother I went with her and we went to a park that I used to go to as a child, and we sat down and we were waiting at the benches at the park, and this gentleman, a bus pulls up, a city bus pulls up. This gentleman walks out with a suitcase and walks up to us, and my mom says, "This is your father. This is your new father." And I was like 5 or 6, I didn't understand who this person was. Literally, I went from this person not being a part of my life to suddenly this was my new father. So at first, I was kind of excited because I'd always wanted a father and I never got a chance to meet my own father. And so a part of me was really happy and excited that I was going to finally have an opportunity to have a father, because I had spent endless nights crying every single time I saw other kids with their dads, and I never got a chance to meet mine. And the one time that I had the opportunity to meet my father, which was at one of my birthday parties, I waited all day for him and until the sun was going down. And then he called and said he had a flat tire and wouldn't be coming, and never showed. He didn't show up at my birthday party. So I never got a chance to meet him. So with this gentleman, he came into our lives, and my mother introduced him as my new father. I never met the guy, and so that was it. And so this guy, with unbeknownst to me, they had already gotten married. So they had already gotten married before I was even aware of anything like that. So she had, gone to the courthouse, got married, didn't know that this man was using her to get his citizenship because he was from El Salvador. So he was using her to get his citizenship, totally like, buttered her up, got her to buy into his story. The moment that he moved in with us, within weeks, he became abusive, and he became extremely abusive. And so I remember one instance where she was just trying to explain something to him, and he grabbed a coffee mug and he hit her across the face with the coffee mug, and it shattered into a bunch of pieces across the floor. Again, I was like 6 at this point, and so that was one of the experiences I remember. There was another experience where we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. We had lived there since I was born, in this 1-bedroom apartment, and we had a couch, and I was sitting at the couch with my cousin, and we were having orange slices, and I was peeling the oranges, and I had put the orange peels on the couch. And he saw me do that and immediately got extremely angry, started yelling at me. He went, grabbed me by one of my ankles, lifted me up in the air by one of my ankles, took off his belt, and he started to beat me with his belt buckle in the air while my cousin was standing there screaming for him to stop and to put me down. And I'm in the air flailing about, just screaming, asking for help and screaming for someone to help me. And he's just beating me over these orange slices on the couch. So this is the kind of individual that we were dealing with. And these instances just got worse and worse and worse. And even when I was sexually molested by his father, my stepfather's father, that wasn't enough for my mother. She stuck around with this guy for years and kept going back. And even with the family trying to help her to get out of this relationship, to leave this person, to end it, even after I was molested, still stuck with this person and ended up, sticking around and kept going back, kept putting myself and my younger sisters into this situation. And it got to the point where I didn't want to come home from school because I was afraid of him, but I didn't want to go to school because I was severely bullied as a child. So I had no place to go to feel safe. I remember one instance where I had accidentally, the toilet was making a funny noise after I flushed it, and I freaked out because I thought that he was going to find out and he was going to beat me. And so I had lifted the back of the toilet to fix it because I'm like, I have to fix this or he's going to hurt me. And so I lifted up the thing and it was too heavy, and I accidentally dropped it and it broke. And I mean, that was like a freak out moment for me. And I freaked and I ran to the neighbor's house and I went into their bathroom and I hid next to their toilet for 2 hours. So, and then the neighbor realized what was going on and I was scared. They didn't know that he was beating me, and so or that he was being violent to us. And even when my mother was pregnant, like, he had beaten her once and they called an ambulance and they said that she'd fallen, but he had beaten her. He kicked her in the stomach with my sister, one of my youngest sisters, when she was pregnant. So they had called him and said, he's over here, he's scared. And he came over to the neighbor's house and he tried to say like I was a very dramatic child and I was very sensitive. But he's like, he loved me. He would never hurt me. Completely lied to them. But so that's the kind of situation I was dealing with. And I dealt with that for years because she put me in that situation. Her attachment, her bad decision, her lack of wisdom, her lack of common sense put us in that situation. And she chose that relationship, those circumstances, and her ill decision-making process over the well-being of her own children, the well-being of herself. And so he broke her down. And I remember who my mother was before that relationship, and she was the kind of person where if she laughed, her laugh was infectious. And you could hear her at the dinner table with her sisters laughing, the loudest person in the room laughing. And I remember that laughter. Never heard that laughter again. That laugh never came back after that relationship happened. And so she chose that relationship and to put us as children in harm's way consistently over and over again. And that was on her. So she owns that decision. She owns that experience. I own the pain I endured. That is mine. And no one can tell me that I don't have the right to express the challenge of that. Not to say for you, Jenny, don't take that personally. It's not to do with you. But what I'm saying is, no one in this world has the right to tell me that I don't own that experience, because I went through it and I lived it, and it's my experience to share. And whether my mother cares to be put on blast or not doesn't matter. She made those decisions. That's on her. And so not only that, but coming back to the schizophrenia, my mother had no, even though she was suffering from battered wife syndrome, she had never suffered from any schizophrenia in her life. She had never suffered from mental illness in her life. And so when she finally made the decision, after the family pleaded with her to leave him and offered her a place to stay, she finally made the decision to leave the relationship. And she had to plan it out, because she had to do it when he wasn't there. So I remember we left and we didn't go back. And at that time, she was going through the divorce proceedings. And as she was leaving the courthouse after the proceedings were done and she got full custody, he had always told her, if you ever leave me, I will kill you. And if you ever go to someone else or try to leave me for someone, I will kill you. Like, he made threats, endless threats over many years. So she believed him, and I believed him too. And so after the court hearing, she was leaving the courthouse and he followed her and had every intention to kill her. And she arrived home that day after the court hearing, and she had her first psychotic breakdown. And after that psychotic breakdown, she was institutionalized. At first, they thought she was like possessed by a demon. So they took her to a church, try to have her cleansed, try to have her, exercise. Obviously, that wasn't what was wrong with her. So they took her to a hospital, which then they took her to a psychiatric hospital, and she was institutionalized for a while. So us children, we were all split up. And my sisters were sent to live with uncles and aunts, and I was kept with my grandfather. So when my mother came out of the institution, and she was in there for like 8 months, I think, the first time, because I remember my grandfather taking me to visit her. She had made these little popsicle stick houses, but she was way overly medicated, and you could tell she was just a completely different person. My mother died in that moment when she had her psychotic breakdown. The mother that I knew died, and the personality that I knew, that I grew up with, died, and a completely new personality emerged, medicated. And so that was years of that, back and forth, in and out of institutions. Me always being put with her and having to deal with her in that state, and the family not giving her enough proper medical care either, because they didn't know how to deal with her. They just thought she wanted attention. She didn't want attention. She kept having thoughts of killing people and taking knives to slit people's throats. So she was going through a lot of mental illness, and I was the one that was being put with her. So I was put through that, and she made those bad decisions that led up to her having that breakdown, that led to her becoming a schizophrenic. And so no one owns that but me. I have that experience. And so I have the right to put her on blast for her ill decisions and having put me and my siblings through those experiences. She made those decisions. She made those bad decisions. And so seeing that, having gone through that, I own my experience and my part of that. And so even if she today, hypothetically, if my mother was on the internet and saw me talking or whatever, I love you, Mom. I love you no matter what. And I'm always going to be there for you. But I'll be damned if you're going to have a problem with me expressing to the world or sharing my story with the world about what I had to endure because of her bad decisions. That's what she's going to have to live with for the rest of her life. We all make bad decisions and bad choices in our lives. I have my fair share of bad decisions and bad choices, and I'm going to have to live with that for the rest of my life. But the person, anyone that I've hurt, anyone that I've affected in that way, they own that, and they are more than welcome to put that out there. But I own those experiences, and so I am going to share that, because even if it will never be rectified, it will never be undone, it will never be resolved in this lifetime for me and my mother, other people can at least learn from those experiences. Every time I have a client who tells me that their husband beats them, immediately I go into, oh no, I'm not about to let you not hear the truth from my mouth about this relationship and your bad decision-making process about staying in this relationship when it's obvious that nothing is going to get better. If you've already tried several times to work it out with them, you need to leave the goddamn relationship, get the hell out of the house, and strategically plan it. Because I'll be damned if I'm gonna hold my tongue and not express to you what I had to go through as the child of someone making those same decisions. So I use those experiences, and I use them very much with love for my mother, very much for understanding, because I also made very similar bad decisions when I was younger, because I repeated some of my mother's examples. And so I had to learn the hard way, and I almost went down the same road. So I came out of that and I survived. And so for my mother, it's a completely different story. But I own those experiences, and so it doesn't matter whether she agreed with it or not. She didn't want me to express to the world or to share my story. Then she shouldn't have put me through it. So, and I was a child. I was not in the position to make those choices different, to force her into anything other than that. So that's where I come with all of that. So, but that's why I say, like, I know sometimes people are like, is she okay with that? No, like, I don't. It doesn't matter to me because I was put through it and I own those experiences. So that's where I come from. Um, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to answer that question, because I know some people, sometimes it comes down to like what's preferred, people sparing people's feelings or potentially saving someone's life and keeping them from putting their own children and themselves through the same experience. I would rather attempt to save someone's life than to spare my mother's feelings. So that's my like angle on it. So no, I don't love her any. I love my mother. I love my mother. I will always love my mother. And, I think the fondest memories of my mother is when I was a child, because there were moments where it was a very special time because it was just me and her. But at the same time, she's not the person that she was before that happened. And she changed drastically and she became a completely different person after that happened. So, you know. Thank you, Xtina. I appreciate that. I really do. Yeah, I really do appreciate that. Um, no, no, I think, well, with schizophrenia, I wrote a paper on this in my freshman year of college because I did go to college for like a couple semesters before I dropped out because my mother was getting ill again, and then my sister at that time was going through mental illness as well because she's bipolar. But she's done a complete. My sister is like the complete opposite of my mother as far as mental illness is concerned, and mental illness runs in our family. So it is a thing. It is what it is in our family genetics. But no, I wrote a paper on this because I wrote a paper for my psychology class on the different forms of schizophrenia, and my mother suffers from undifferentiated schizophrenia, which means she has a little bit of all the varieties of schizophrenia. But sometimes people who develop schizophrenia develop it after a traumatic experience or a psychotic. They have a psychotic breakdown. Some people it comes out of nowhere. I experienced it again about I want to say about 8 years ago. I experienced it again with one of my employees at Starbucks. He was like a perfectly normal person, and then one day he came in after the gym. He had just come from the gym. He came in to cover his shift. Really cool guy, and something happened. And I thought at first I thought maybe he was on something, but then his behavior started to remind me and take me back to my mother, and I was like, something's going on here. And I even mentioned to his mother, I said, you need to take him to go to a neurologist or go and get him checked for anything that is even remotely associated with mental illness or schizophrenia, or he's on something because something is wrong. And this is a very like something's wrong. And at first, she was very hesitant and she didn't want to accept that that was what was going on. And I didn't know for sure. He needed to go to the doctor. He needed to go to a doctor or a specialist to get properly assessed. And then a year later, she called me, and he hadn't worked with us for many. After that, he stopped working because something happened. And a year later, she reached out to me and she said she was so sorry that she was so like resisting of even anything to do with him at the time she spoke to me because it just took a while for her to come to terms with it, and he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and she just finally came to terms with it a year later, and then she called me and apologized. But she was just like, I'm sorry, it wasn't. I'm like, no, I get it. I've been dealing with this my whole life. Like, I still someday think that maybe my mom's gonna have a miraculous like recovery, and it's never going to happen. And so, it's one of those things where you always hope they're going to get better or they're going to come out of it when they like out of nowhere. And usually schizophrenia, there are a lot of kids or a lot of people who are born with it and they are experiencing or expressing it around that time in their life when they're going through hormonal changes. But there's another group of people who develop it in their late 20s, early 30s, which is around the time frame. My mom developed it around like the 32, 33 year period, which is another period, which is why whenever people are going through a whole lot and they're struggling and they're really getting through it, you always don't want to push someone past their limit because you don't know what's capable. You don't know what's possible in their head, and they could break, they can snap, something can happen. And then recovering from that is an entire journey, a life experience that you don't really want to have to go through. And so that's why I always tell people, like, it's really it's not an easy experience to go through. So like with this whole move and everything with my mom, I've been having to talk to her every day, just to kind of help her to like get herself, just to help her feel comfortable and okay that we're moving her, because she's changing her surroundings, her environment, and she's been living in her apartment complex for like 10 plus years. So we've just been trying to get her to just calm down, and we're trying to build it up so that it's like a positive thing. It's a positive change. It's an upgrade. There's, it's a better apartment complex than where she is at now. So we've been trying to help her to just get okay mentally so that she doesn't have another breakdown, because with the medications that she's on, and she is on like a government, she's already retired. Well, she's in the retirement age. So she's got the like medic care, right? Yeah, Medicare. But with her medication, it's always been government subsidized. Without the medication, she would be institutionalized. So the medication helps to keep her stable. And every single time there's either a new doctor change and they think they know more than what the doctor knew before, or they want to save the program money, they mess with her medication, she'll have a relapse and then she has to be institutionalized again. It's already happened like 3 or 4 times. Right now, this is the longest she's gone to be stable. So since she's been at that apartment complex, it's the longest she's gone being this stable. But in a few months ago, she just got a new doctor. And her old doctor, who's been her doctor for, again, 10 plus years, retired. So the new doctor, who's a younger guy, he felt that she was over medicated. And so he adjusted her medication. And so he brought her down her medication to a lower level. And she's becoming more sensitive. And even my cousin was telling me yesterday, she's like, y'all might want to talk to the doctor because she's behaving differently. And I'm like, I know. And she's already had a few incidents in the last few months where she's become really emotionally unstable for a little bit, and then she comes back to stability. So we're like, oh god. So I think my sister is going to talk to the doctor the next time she goes in. But that's the way it is. It's like you either medicate them to where they're kind of like just there, which it makes them tired. It makes them not really want to be as engaging. Or you take them off the medication, they become more engaging, but at the same time, they also become more unstable. And right after they made the changes to the medication, she was calling me and crying because she says, I feel like strangling myself. And I was just like, oh my God, why do they change her medication? And so it can be a very hectic scenario with her, which is why we always have to try to stay on top of it. Luckily she's balanced out right now. So she seems okay, but with these moves and everything that's happening, she can become very unstable at a drop of a hat. So that's where we're like, okay, we're having to pay attention to what's going on with her right now. Yeah. Yeah, people like sometimes when I tell people like my history, like they don't know, like that's just like one little fraction of my history and the traumas that I've had to endure in this lifetime. So that way when people even though, I'm like 38 years old now, 39, I'm 39 years old, I'm going to be 40 next year. And so, I always tell people people always think, especially because I do have a more mature audience as well, or more mature, clientele base, they don't always realize. I'm like, no, I've been through it, sweetheart. Like I can tell you I've been through it. There's a reason why I began to, because for me, my way of coping with all of these extremely challenging periods in my life, my way of coming to peace within myself and not feeling like the victim of a hoax or a victim of a Russian roulette game with God, was to actually try to understand the trauma, trying to understand these situations, trying to understand what did this mean? What does this mean? What is this for? What is this for? And so spirituality and connecting with source, connecting with that, for me, has been my ability to understand, to comprehend, to come to peace, but also to use these experiences and apply purpose to it. Apply purpose to it. And I try to find the purpose in all of it. I may not always deal with it the best way in the moment, but I give myself an opportunity to be human. And then once I have that moment of expression, then I'm like, okay, I need to like get it together. Like, what do I need to do with this, or what needs to come from this? And so I try to gain whatever I can from the experience, because for myself, it helps me to deal with the immensity of trauma in this world, in my history, by knowing in my being that what I go through, what I have endured, what I experience, and the sacrifice of my experiences. Those are sacrifices. I call them sacrifices. Is not for nothing. It's going to matter. It's going to mean something to someone, and I'm going to use it, whether I'll be damned or not. I'm going to use it, because that's the only way that I can come to terms with the immensity of everything that I've had to endure. So for me, doing these lives, connecting with people, giving people the benefit of my experience, giving people, an understanding of what they may be going through, and helping them to come to terms about it, is my way of acknowledging the love of God, and the understanding and the perspective and the awareness of God, in a way that I can help to alleviate someone's suffering, or give someone clarity, or give someone purpose as well. So that's the point. So for me, that is why I do what I do in a motivating way. It's what motivates me, because I know that what I've gone through is not just for me. It's too big. It's too much. It's too much suffering and pain for one lifetime to just be for me. It must be for everyone. So that's why I give myself over to the experience. I give myself over to source. I give myself over to be used as a vessel for teaching, or for the alleviation of suffering, or just to provide an opportunity to understand, and even just to provide a connection to God. I mean, all of this stuff has not taken me away from God or from my connection to source. It has actually amplified. I have more faith in my being than some of the people who have spent their entire day, their entire life, every minute of every day reading the Bible. Because that's just reading. That's just reading and regurgitating, and using that to build the ego, to expand the sense of self in that form. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but like, what does that actually have to do with God? Because it's an experience, it's not based in words. It's based on an experience. And you cannot take one book and one perspective and one set of experiences that people have had regarding the divine, and apply that to everybody's life and everybody's experience, because everybody is different. Everybody will experience this world in a very different and unique way. And God is for everybody, not for the select or chosen few. God is for all beings. We are all vessels for the divine. We are all vessels of God and source in this form. So that's why, whatever I have to do to use it, then I'm going to use it. Yeah. No, I don't feel so bad. Don't feel bad at all. You're fine. It actually was a great, it was a great segue into expressing and sharing some of my story. It was a segue into, giving people a chance to understand who I am, because people don't, there's a bunch of people who don't know who I am or don't know my story. And that's, like I said, one chapter in a very thick book. And that, there's a whole, other set of things that go along with that. So no, don't feel bad at all. No, there's no need for that. Um, Thank you. I appreciate the praise, y'all. I will say this though, I am not, by any means, I am not perfect. Just this, like, I definitely still make mistakes. I'm still an asshole. Some days I still need to like get my shit together. There are some days where I don't handle things as well. So it just depends on where I'm at in my life and what I'm going through. And there are times where I handle things in the way that I think I need to handle them. There are times where I don't, and I own up to that, and I have to work on that and acknowledge that. Okay, well, that's an area of opportunity for me, and so it's one of those things. So and I definitely still make mistakes. See, you left for your kids because you made the right decision. You made the right decision. Not at all. No, not at all. Um, you know, you know that you have gotten to a place of healing and inner resolution when you can go back and talk about these experiences and these moments in your life, in your story, that don't rile you up. Like, in other words, I can talk about those really painful experiences, but I don't feel pain in the moment when I'm discussing them. I actually feel like a trophy. I feel like it's my trophy, or it's like I own it. It's almost like that is some shit to go through. So it's like no. So I feel almost a sense of empowerment because of it. I'm like I've come through that. Like I've come through that, and so there's a level of empowerment that comes along with it because I was not broken by those experiences. I was defined. I was refined. I was allowed to understand my connection to source and to God because of some of those experiences. So when I go back and I talk about these things, I don't feel pain on that level. I can talk about it and it's okay. Like it's not a painful thing. Now there are times where it may come up and then I may feel a little pain around it, but at the same time, then it's just a moment of expression and energy, and then it kind of settles back down. But for the most part, when I talk about my past and my history, it's not painful to think about. It actually is empowering to talk about because I know that there are other people who are going through the same thing or need to hear what I have to say because it might make a difference in their lives as well. Google Landmark Forum and sign up. Yeah, I have a Landmark Forum. I had friends back in the day in Houston when I used to work in the medical center at Starbucks. I had friends who would attend Landmark and they told me about it. And they actually mentioned it to me and it sounded a lot like it sounded a lot like law of attraction manifestational stuff. So I remember hearing about that. Yeah. The thing about it, not to say that this is how the way it is now. I don't know what it is like now. I think I remember back then they mentioning that you have to pay like a membership fee and you have to pay all these expenses and fees and all of that stuff. And if I could, my wish in this lifetime, my ultimate goal is to form a organization where people can receive the benefit of spiritual ideology and understanding and guidance and support for free. There are areas of that organization that would have to earn income or revenue to be able to sustain itself. But my goal is to create an organization that can base its income on like just things like a class like having like yoga classes or having like medicinal tea house or having reiki sessions and practitioners where they don't have to worry about the business side. I'll worry about the business side, like all these other things. It's like an all-in-one organization, but they still offer plenty of things to people for free, zero charge, because I don't think enough is done in this world to offer for free. And I would like to have an organization that is able to do that, that is able to generate enough income to support itself. And then any extra would go over to the charitable side of the organization that actually creates like, kitchens for people where if you can't afford food, you can come and have 3 square meals a day. We will pay for it. We will take care of it. You just show up, you have your card, come and get your meal, bring your kids, bring your family, whatever. If you need a place to stay that night, we have dorms that we will have and make available for you so that you don't have to worry about it. You don't have a place to hang out and you want to be just around people who are going to, just be people, then we have a huge, massive auditorium. So there's these two sides of this organization that I would love to create. There's the part of it that is profitable, that uses that profit to provide free spiritual services to people, counseling, guidance, support, etc. And then there's the other side of it where whatever's extra goes to supporting basic things for people. That is my ultimate goal and my ultimate dream. I even have the name of this organization in my head. I've created this organization. I dreamt this up like 10 plus years ago. And every year I've gotten more refined and more like focused on how I want it to be. And I want this to be like, these mega organization that is focused on actually setting an example for humanity. We don't need to be each other's enemy. We can be there for each other. And if you don't have what you need, come and we will help you. You don't need to owe us. You don't owe us anything. We will use the money we're making to support this part of it, because you have all these organizations that just want to make money, and it's all about, and that's the capitalist way, right? It's like, how can I be more profitable, maybe make more money, and I'm like, no, like, make enough money to support what you need to support, and then use the extra to help people, use the extra to like provide support and benefits, and like just give people a chance to have a basic life without the need to suffer, when we can afford in this world to cover basic needs. And in some countries, I know this is already in medical care, all these things are already in place. In some countries here in the US, there's still a lot we need to learn from some of these places. And at the same time, we can take it to the next level. If we're going to, offer people, shelter, food, medicine, then let's set a better example. Let's take it to the next level. Let's do even better than some of the other countries that have been able to do. Like, that's my thinking. That's the way I am. So it's more like that. So that's where I come from when it comes to that. Oh, I love y'all. I'm enjoying the conversation in the room, just watching how all of y'all are. Rick, Rick is a friend of mine who's also a therapist. He's actually a professional psychologist and counselor and therapist. I mean, he's a professional at a lot of things, because Rick is amazing. He's like, the level of, he's next level healing. Um, Rick, oh my God, I love you so much. Thank you so much for that, Rick. It's interesting because when I think of you, I'm like, I always think to myself, Rick has a lot to deal with, and I don't want, if I have a question about something, it's like, if I want, I can go and like get a therapist. I don't want to like ask you for a freebie or something, just because I always feel like I'm like, I don't want to ask for freebie. So that's why I never, have approached you. That's why, Rick. But I appreciate that, Rick, and I will keep that in mind. And I will keep that in mind because I appreciate that. Fern talk. That's, like, Cena's like, I hope you finish your book by saying thank you for coming to my Fern talk. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's funny because I actually used to have like a little like series called Ferny Talk, or Ferny, was it Ferny Talk? Yeah, Ferny Talk. It was called Ferny Talk. So it's funny that you said Fern Talk, because that's what it was. If you go to my original YouTube videos back in the day, they're called Fern Talk or Ferny Talk. All right, guys. I think I'm getting to the end of my. Oh, I love you. Oh, Okay, yeah, okay. I'm there. I'm there, and like I'm starting to get warm because you can tell like I'm thinking I'm getting ready. I'm getting hungry too because I gotta go make dinner. So, all right, guys, I love you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, I won't be here Friday because I'm going to get my booster tomorrow, and then I'm gonna give my body a chance to kind of. Plus, I still have appointments to do Friday and Saturday, so I'm like just like hoping that I don't have to deal with any craziness to get to those appointments. If not, then I have to reschedule people. But I love you all. Thank you so much, and I will talk to y'all next Wednesday. Okay, bye everybody. Love you.